This is Monica Perez with returning guest, a top flight, world renowned journalist, I'm going to say. In our circles, you are world renowned. You're here to talk about your latest book. Welcome, Iain Davis, to talk about the technocratic dark state and all that that implies. How are you doing, Iain?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for inviting me, Monica. It's really nice to be back again.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I wanted, I just saw some of the things that you were working on lately, and I wanted to talk to you about all of them. And I realized that they are all in your latest book, The Technocratic Dark State. So we're never going to get through all of it, but we might get through the few things that I wanted to highlight. And I recommend that people get the book. You sent it to me, and I expected to be able to just blow through it. I can usually blow through the books, but it was robust. It's not like overly long. It was robust. It was very well written. It was very comprehensive, and it was gripping. And I did blow through it, but it just took me more time than I thought. But it was very edifying, and there's some concepts in there that I think might be worth delving into. But before we get to some of those few specifics I want to highlight, can you tell me why you felt this book had to be written, and how long it took you, and how you got your mind around the concepts and did your research, or is that too much to ask? Is that your trade secret?
No problem. No problem.
No trade secrets.
Well, in terms of research, I just do it the traditional way. I don't use AI or anything like that. I read documents and I read reports and I pick through information and try to make sense of it, and read terrible things like the Dark Enlightenment and try to understand them, which is not easy, I have to say. And put things together. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book is about the clique of Silicon Valley oligarchs that are behind the Trump administration. Some people often refer to them as the PayPal mafia, or the tech bros, or the techno kings, or I think that there's more. It's a bigger network than that, and they're clearly behind the Trump administration. They paid to put him in office, after all, and it's about their influence, what they believe, what they are trying to use the Trump administration for, and more broadly, their kind of global ambitions and how that fits in with the kind of global
So
system that already exists.
I want to dig right in and ask you some details about that. The way I look at these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if you look at it the same way, they're what I call created persons a lot of times. Like they've got their wealth by being chosen. Yeah. Elon Musk is a great example of somebody who was given a lot of subsidies. I think if you look at Thiel, I remember, I don't know if it was Facebook or Palantir or both, he got a lot of those shares really way before it was crystal clear they'd be worth a lot, or maybe free. He got them. So these guys are multi-billionaires in ways that, isn't just earn it. So I think they were chosen by someone, there's a power behind that throne. And so when I look at what this ideology they put forth, whether it's called the Dark Enlightenment or whatever, I wonder, somebody's putting those words in their mouths, probably, or, maybe they're true believers. I think the people who are chosen are often the ones who really have their mind around the concept so that they can present it well. Sometimes they're not even in on it. But I wonder if you think they believe in this, like their ideological concept of the Dark Enlightenment and how things should really be, or if they're just putting it out there as ideological cover for good old-fashioned totalitarianism with tech as the tactics, or maybe even just scare tactics, that it's really never going to come to that, but they keep us always in a state of terror. So that was huge, but pick and choose what you like. Pick whatever you want out of that.
I think I get the gist of it. Yeah. That's something that I ask in the book. That's something that I question in the book. Is it? Do they actually believe this stuff, or is it just expedient for them to kind of claim it as some sort of pseudo intellectual basis upon which to move forward. I mean, it clearly, I think that it's caught the imagination of the people that we might broadly refer to as the neo-reactionary movement, and that in turn, because there is some kind of intellectual kind of justification or arguments at least presented, that has enticed support from a wider community of, unfortunately, primarily libertarian thinking people. On the surface level, if there are libertarian concepts within it. So the Dark Enlightenment is very much talks about decentralization, about breaking down the constructs of power, about dividing that up into well, they talk about fungible shares, but dividing it up into its constituent elements, decentralizing authority, removing the power of government. Perhaps one of the most famous kind of advocates of it, guy in America called Curtis Yarvin, talks about this thing called demesclerosis, by which he means the disease of the disease. So there are. I have to say that they misrepresent, neither here nor there. But anyway, so there's a kind of reason for the kind of intellectualization of it. I hesitate to call it philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's inhumane. So it's, to my mind, that doesn't serve any philosophical purpose. So I wouldn't call it.
Thiel was rooted in Strauss, right?
Ultimately, I mean, that's what it boils down to. It's all playing with words. And another reason that I wrote the book is that they use impenetrable language and jargon. I think that's deliberate. I think that's deliberately designed to deter people from digging into what they're talking about. And when you do dig into what they're talking about, at the bottom of it, there isn't really there's nothing new in it. We're talking about oligarchy. We're talking about the notion of a tiny clique ruling everybody else, having absolute control over everybody else. There is very much kind of strong overlaps between the Dark Enlightenment and technocracy, and that was developed in the 1920s and the 1930s, so that isn't new either. And there are aspects of it that are definitely, you can see in the eugenics movement from the 19th century. So, I mean, there's nothing new. There's nothing new, but it has been cloaked in new with new terms and new language. But basically, it's the same tired old arguments trotted out again, but just dressed up for a different audience and dressed up for a different era.
That's very interesting now that you bring it up and you go into the roots, like in the 30s and earlier. And it didn't click till just now that this is an old concept that must have emerged, if not earlier, with like the Industrial Revolution and just the possibility of doing it. Of course, let's say John D. Rockefeller or whatever, will try to think of how to do it. And it isn't new. And it reminds me of kind of they're recycling the communism capitalism dialectic, even though, I mean, that's not really the battle that's going on right now. But yeah, it isn't new. And now that you mention it, and the libertarian thing, I always, from the beginning, people think that I should have, because I've been a libertarian literally before anybody even knew what it was. I have a t-shirt that says, "Who is Ron Paul?" because he was running for office in 2008 and people didn't know. When I started going out with my husband long before that, he said, "Who are you voting for?" And I said, "The libertarian." He said, "What's a libertarian?" So like so people think that I would have been on board with the Bitcoin thing right away, because of course I heard of it. But my reaction immediately was that is just a stepping stone to a cashless society. And a cashless society, the reason they want that is for surveillance, so that you cannot do things off the grid. So that the Bitcoin, the blockchain feels like truly a chain in that how can you have true liberty when the system maybe is not overarching like it looks like, but it's underneath, it's in the roots, and it's everything, including like tokenizing natural resources and stuff. I mean, it's everywhere and it's everything. So maybe you don't see it, but it's the opposite of, I mean, how can you have true liberty when you can't even own, the trees that give you air?
Yeah, I mean, the way I would look at it is, I mean, personally, I think that technology is just a tool like any other. So you can use a gun for good or for ill. You can use it for hunting to feed your family, or you can murder people with it. You know, it's not the technology or the tool itself. It is how it is used and how it is purposed. So, for example, if you take blockchain, for example, if you look at, and I mean, there's a lot of debate, and you know, and over the years, nobody's really resolved this. But if you look at back at the old kind of cypherpunks that were developing the kind of before Satoshi put out the white paper, they were already working on the kind of cryptographic problems that would enable people to send payments electronically. You know, all the different issues. They were already working on that. Now, obviously, they came out of places like MIT and all that sort. So immediately you're already talking about the influence of money and power, potentially influencing them. Certainly, the intelligence agencies. A lot of people would say that the intelligence agencies were behind that. You know, so and I'm probably leaning more to that kind of way of thinking about it now. But nonetheless, the notion of being able to use distributed ledger technology, let's say blockchain, to be able to make payments without an intervening third party, which is what it could be, and which is what
It's what people like about it.
Yeah, it's what it could be, and it is what people like. You know, Nakamoto, when he put out the paper, that's what he was alluding to and talking about. That could be a genuinely useful thing for humanity. I mean, you know, it would potentially enable us to conduct business internationally without banks. You know, so that would that potentially be useful? Of course it would. But as with anything, you know, let's take the internet, for example. You know, the internet has brought about a tremendous revolution and a lot of benefits in terms of the way that we communicate with each other. You and I are doing this now because of it. Now, you know, it's a big part of my business. It's a big part of your business. It's what enables us to do what we do. But it is also the centralization of all information exchanges. So and it was also developed by people like DARPA. So you know, although the tool itself is not necessarily a bad thing, you know, and certainly we're seeing that in the UK very much at the moment as we're heading towards very stringent online censorship and digital identity. That's no doubt that's where we're going. You know, it can be used for ill, and it is often these kind of technologies. And one of the points that I make in the book is that technology is controlled by investment, and who controls the investment? Generally, let's call them the oligarchs. It's the supreme capitalists that control the investment flows. So if they're controlling the development of technology, that means they can bend it to their own purposes, and that's what they do constantly, all the time. So what we end up with, or what you call or tools that have been given to us for a purpose by people with agendas. So but that doesn't necessarily mean intrinsically or inherently bad.
Yes, we definitely know that by the defense industry, by the CIA, they, in my opinion, many of these technology in capital over labor, you would have to have a hand. Not everything can be controlled forever, and I just think, you know, forever is a long time, and it probably won't be controlled forever. But like in my lifetime, I don't see this trajectory changing course, although I'm open to persuasion and a persuasive way of thinking. One thing that would make it seem more hopeful, which I really wonder, is you bring up, I think I'm understanding this correctly, a tension between the old guard, you want to call it the black nobility or whatever, the people who controlled the money in the past, like since the Venetians probably, and this new guard that want to kind of take money private. It's hard for me to believe that the money that came from the defense industry, the CIA, whatever, into this stuff, probably with this in mind, was against the will of the money powers.
Yeah, no, I don't think they would have proceeded as far. I mean, the people that we're talking about, and in the book I refer to them as neo nerds. So that, you know, they give themselves self-aggrandizing titles like Techno King or
yeah. The
So I
mafia.
think, well, no, I'm not talking about them in those terms. I'm going to call them neo nerds.
Yeah.
And they, I think, the way that it seems to me that it works is that they probably a kind of group of people that are obviously kind of got quite successful businesses that have been brought to fruition by their close relationship with government and the intelligence agencies. I mean, Palantir example, classic example. I mean, it exists because of its relationship with the CIA. And
Yeah. I mean,
and
InQtel was
and
its VC.
InQtel was its seed funding. And you mentioned earlier about Thiel's early investment in what was then Facebook. So which he invested in shortly after LifeLog ended, which is obviously was run by DARPA, and then Thiel suddenly invests in Facebook. Now he only put in a relatively small amount. I think it was $50 million or $55 million, which even then wasn't a massive investment.
Yeah.
But think about what that was worth to him 5 years later. So I mean, that as a speculative investment, that was a pretty safe bet. And the reason it was a safe bet was because, as it is now evident, that these big tech firms become big tech firms precisely because they are serving government agendas, or quite often working closely hand in hand with the intelligence agencies. Google's no different. That's got InQtel funding as well. So I mean, it's not that's how these things happen. So you've got like a new oligarch class that's growing up out of Silicon Valley. Now, as you quite rightly say, I mean, and as I discuss in the book, traditionally the kind of what we might kind of the traditional kind of Rhodes Milner type transatlantic kind of establishment oligarchy, people like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and these people, and the older, potentially a lot of people talk about black nobility families. I think there's quite a lot in that. You can go, as we were saying, you could go all the way back to the Venetian bankers to talk about them. They control the monetary supply. They've controlled the monetary supply, certainly since Bretton Woods. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, I would say that, you could go all the way back to the kind of Rialto Bridge in Venice and start.
Yeah, they invented it, really. And sometimes it's hard to get something away from somebody who invented it.
Fractional reserve banking was their baby. Yeah, definitely. So that's where the power to control really all money, all finance, therefore all economies, therefore all governments, therefore all business. I mean, it's just pretty clear how that process would work. So along come these guys from Silicon Valley and say, we want to start these kind of sovereign independent states outside of the reach of government, which, the traditional oligarchy controls government, so there's not necessarily much of a benefit in that for them. And we want to do this, and this is how we can do it. We can do it using technology, but in order to do it, we must have the sovereign power to issue our own currencies. We want to have that power that you have reserved exclusively for yourself. We want in on that game. Now that must have been, I mean, obviously this has been thought about for a long, long time, because that's a massive ask. You're asking, that is asking, you're asking to enter the most select and the most highly protected clique in the world. You want to be part of it, and you're saying, so you've got to have something to offer. You've got to have something on the table, something that interests them. And what I think that this Silicon Valley clique offered, because they now have that power because they've got Trump in office, and Trump has signed the Genius Act, and that has enabled them to have that power.
So funny, an 80-year-old quote Republican is bringing in the techno state with the AI action plan and the Genius Act. This is not a guy who's these are his campaign platforms, because he's sitting awake at night wondering what should happen in the country. As my mother says, he loves this country. I'm like, yeah, I think he is totally disconnected.
Mark Andreessen, who openly admits he's a neo-reactionary, who's part of this clique, he's a Silicon Valley oligarch investor. He's one half of Andreessen Horowitz, arguably the biggest tech investment firm in the world. He he openly stated and wrote, even it was even published, that their only interest in the Trump administration was not because they had particularly any kind of interest in Republican causes, or even MAGA or Trump or anything like that, but was purely because they could, in his words, and I'm paraphrasing here, use the administration to achieve our objectives. Like, they openly just said that. So that's what these guys are at. They're not hiding it, really, and that's what they've done. But now with this power to create money that's been given to them by, or agreed, you would have thought that there would have to be some agreement there to allow them to do that. Obviously, that they are offering something which is even more enticing to, the globalist kind of oligarchy than being able to control governments. So the question is then, what is that? Well, that is, in my view, that is what I've called the technocratic dark state. And it is the privatization of all governance. It's the removal of what we identify, what we consider to be government, and replacing it with private sovereign states, which is direct oligarchy when you think about it. That is just like the essence of oligarchy.
Okay, I have a few things for you. So first of all, I'll start backwards. Have you read Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash?
I haven't yet, no, and you did send it to me, and I haven't read it, and I keep.
Oh no, I'm not. Don't want to give you homework, but I mean, he obviously knew what was coming. I don't think he thought it up, and these guys were like, "Did you read that book? It's a great idea." No, like he's definitely in on it, but it explains quite easily, helps you visualize what those corporate microstates would look like. And one thing I think it's hard for people to envision, but it's helpful with Snow Crash. So when California was really locked down during lockdown, it was terrible. I don't know how it was in UK or whatever, but I was here for that, and it was just absolute total lockdown for a year and a half. And I ended up taking a flight somewhere. I mean, there were not too many flights, but for some reason I had to go to the airport. And the airport was, I flew on 9/12 or 9/13 after 9/11. Like I went on, it was I think one of the first planes, if not the first plane to take off at an airport. It was so quiet, so dark. There's hardly anybody there. You basically got personally escorted. It was similar after COVID. And what I noted, or like during that lockdown, and what I noticed was, with all these rules and everything, everything that you got in the stores, all the restaurants had the exact same thing, just these prepackaged salads, and nobody was taking out the trash. Like it was gross. Things were spilled on the floor. It was absolutely disgusting. And when you drove on the street, like the trees were grown over the stop signs and stuff. I mean, I think somebody got killed in my neighborhood because of that. And what I think people don't understand is it's sold as shiny and new. Like you think everything is going to look like the international terminal in Heathrow or whatever. It's going to be neon and chrome and clean and Teflon, but it's not. It, like, without competition, without free markets, this stuff deteriorates and gets disgusting. And Snow Crash kind of lays out like what a real corporate. At first, when I read it, I was like, "This sounds awesome." A friend of mine was like, "You got to pay attention to the details." I was like, "Oh shoot." So it is a great representation, but you really don't have to read it because you basically wrote it.
No, I will.
In real life. I will read it. It's a good read too, but you wrote it in real life, so you get it. But so I want to back up a little bit and say, so it sounds to me, just to conclude that like the tech, that what they're using technology to control money, I would say it's very obvious they're using it to control minds. I think Zuckerberg testified before Congress yesterday. They're being sued, whatever, who cares? It's all a show. But also these microstates, they'll control those. But in bridging the gap from the like Black nobility Venetian stuff, there's an intervening event, which is the Rothschilds at Waterloo.
Yeah.
And, they have a say in this. And my assumption is these guys, that the tension really lies between the Black nobility and the Rothschild crowd. And the Rothschild crowd is on board with this stuff. Because they are the ones who control Trump, probably. So that's how these guys know that that's what they can do. But what do you think? Tell me where I'm wrong. I'm just.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether you've seen Derek Brose's kind of latest kind of it's taken him 5 years, hasn't it? His series. It's called The Pyramid of Power, and he explores a lot of these things.
Okay.
And I've always kind of stayed away somewhat from, the kind of, when you're talking about things like, the Committee of 300 and all this kind of stuff.
Because what difference does it make?
Well, not only that, I find that the further you go back in history, the less solid evidence becomes, because it becomes so open to interpretation.
Yeah.
That you start being able to lose kind of touch with it in terms of any kind of solid thing.
Right.
So
the Etruscans didn't have like cost accounting. You didn't see the Etruscans find your the ledger when they took over Rome or whatever.
Hadrian wasn't assassinated by his wife. These things. So you can't. It's difficult. So I've stuck with the model that I came up with, as you're probably aware, and I know we've discussed before, the public-private partnership, because I think what we've got that we can tangibly say this happens. Look at this. This is how policy works. This is where it comes from. This is where it ends up. Is a network. I think there's a global network of people that share a goal, and their goal is now quite evidently is to install a global technocracy. But I mean, even that is just another way of saying, firm global governance where they control everything.
Yeah, right.
That's
these are tactics.
These are
strategies and tactics, but the goal's been the same, as you said, for
so
well over 100 years.
Technocracy is a tool, like we were talking about earlier. Technocracy is a tool that enables them to achieve global governance. That's what they're at. That's what they want. Control of everything. So a system that enables you to centralize and control the distribution and allocation of all resources is perfect, right? That's what you want. So, and I think there's a global network. They probably all stabbing each other in the back all the time, and and jockeying for position and trying to push each other out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, you can just look. There are lawsuits at the top, people do sue each other, like they are at.
Well, notorious. I mean, Bill Gates is notorious for suing people, isn't he? I mean, he's just, it's just. I'm sure that's just the way it works. But nonetheless, I mean, I always liken it to CEOs in a corporation. Or not CEOs in a corporation, but the board in a corporation. So the board in the corporation, at the top of it, steering the corporation, they would all quite happily run each other over at lunchtime if it meant that they could get some sort of advantage. But they will never do anything that will sabotage the corporation itself, because that's where their bread is buttered.
Right. That's their actual shares in it would go down in value.
So, and I think that's probably the system that we've got at the sort of kind of top of the...
That's a good way to look at it, because that is, as far as you can actually see, that is actually how it works. Like there are boards. That is how they do. If the whole thing's a big corporation. And I noticed, I was just talking about this yesterday, that I was trying to figure out this. I don't care about the big psyops that waste a lot of time, like the Epstein drop or whatever. I don't dig into that stuff anymore. But I try to figure out, like, what's the big agenda item here? And with Me Too, like hashtag Me Too, the agenda item, in my opinion, one of them was to clear out boards. So there was a thing, I don't know if people talked about this, only women could get board positions. It may even still be true. For years since then, only women could get board positions. And my thinking was, okay, so so as these guys fall off the boards, they get old or whatever, they're old to start out with, you get these women who are underqualified because they haven't been, you're lowering the depth at which you have to reach to get into the trenches of management to put them up in these boards, and they're not going to know what they're doing. So the CEO, the chairman of the board, is going to have way more power because there's going to be a bunch of people who don't know anything. And the same thing with this Epstein stuff. You're pulling out, like you're making people resign, probably leaving some of their stock behind, literally, because when you resign, you don't always get what, like, so they vest. A lot of those guys, they vest as they sit on the boards or whatever. Like every year they get like a new chunk of their, and then you don't really get it till the end of your tenure. I don't know if board guys have contracts, but CEOs have it like that. You're taking that guy, if he resigns instead of getting fired, he doesn't get that stuff that's been on the table. He doesn't have a seat at the table. He doesn't have the influence he used to have. And so whoever's doing the Epstein thing is taking out a lot of guys that they probably had to share power with. It's a real consolidation at the top. And I think that also shows kind of like that kind of structure is a great analogy and is also literally true. And it also has some backstabbing. Of course, right. They're never going to take out these. That's why Putin, I think, doesn't blow the whistle on the moon landing or ISIS so much, or Edward Snowden or all the things that I'm like, this guy can't be serious. Can't seriously believe it. Because, yeah, he wants more corners, he wants more corners to sell stuff out of, whatever, but he doesn't want to expose the system because he is one of the biggest players in the system. This system is working for him.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think I'm like you with the Epstein thing. I'm kind of vaguely interested in it. I mean, I'm yet to see anything that doesn't that contradicts anything that, for example, Whitney Webb has already written about.
Right.
I mean,
a long time ago.
So for people, I can understand for the wider public, certainly, and I don't mean this in any kind of arrogance. I really don't. I don't mean it like that. But for people that have been looking at this kind of stuff for a long time, there's yet to be anything that I've gone, wow, that's revelatory. There's a lot of stuff in it that I think is questionable. There's stuff that there are people making big assumptions about things that I think, well, hang on a minute, I don't know whether
yes.
But I think the main point, if you think, so why do this? Why release this seemingly so damning information that basically seems to make all governments look like they're, potentially run by kind of secret cabals of pedophiles?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, going back, and it's, and I do feel, I mean, I'm not just saying this because I've written the book. I do think the book is very timely. That's basically what I'm trying to point out in the book, is that there is an agenda to get rid of governments. There's an agenda to get rid of governments.
AI doesn't diddle kids.
Yeah, AI doesn't, prey on.
It encourages it.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean, AI, why would we have these corrupt, questionable people? I mean, and it's bizarre in a way, because that's something that I've argued for a long time.
Yes, you have. Why would you
have these? Why would you put any faith in these?
Yes.
Corrupt,
how do we?
Criminal.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's all well and good. And one of the points that I point out in the book, and this is really important, is, yeah, sure, people like Thiel are talking about doing away with politics in all its forms, which, obviously libertarians, and he's a self-styled libertarian, or says he's a libertarian, not self-styled, self-proclaimed libertarian. And, he'd say all this thing. So libertarians think, oh, yeah, that's great. What a great idea. But what the bit that they're missing is that he wants to replace it with total dictatorship. Technological dictatorship.
Yeah, immutable. Like, you can't mess with it. There's two things I would say. One is, getting back to just real quick, what the purpose of the Epstein thing might be, is also not only to take those people out, but if you notice, and you were kind of saying like some of the stuff seems overblown, I looked at a whole list of like the most recent resignations, and every single one of them, the thing the guy did wrong, or woman in the case of the Goldman Sachs lawyer, was continue a relationship with Epstein as benignly as after his first conviction, which wasn't well publicized and was a very relatively minor charge. So, you could say like, this is a friend of mine. I don't think he really did that, although anyone who knew him would have known he did that. But these guys in these seats of power lay down with dogs night and day. Like if you were going to hold a standard like that, you'd never get anything done. I'm not saying you shouldn't hold a standard like that. I do, and I don't get anything done. I'm not at the top of the world. But what it did was it said to people, look, we can cancel you for your associations with anybody. So always be on your guard. Don't trust anybody. Don't be loyal. We can take you out at the knees at any time. We decide who's okay and who's not okay, and that is also powerful, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, let's be, he was sentenced for or found guilty of trafficking minors.
The first time, that was the first one.
Yeah.
But why was he only in for like a year and a half?
Well, because he had a sweetheart deal, didn't he? Although apparently that's a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's so bizarre. We've got this bizarre situation where, we are living in a period, aren't we? A time where all the conspiracy theories are coming true, right? Yeah. Right. So, and yet, so all the things, not all the things. I'm not saying that. I mean, I've just written something else. But anyway, I'm getting off the point.
But I'm sorry I did this to you.
All the conspiracy theories are true. Obviously, it all depends on the evidence, right? But a lot of things that were called conspiracy theories and now people are starting to realize, oh, well, actually that happened or that was true. Now, one of the things that people call conspiracy theories have been saying for a long time is that blackmailing politicians because of their sexual preferences or their criminal activities, especially their financial criminal activities, the frauds that they commit, that blackmailing politicians is very common, and there are networks that do that, such as the network that Epstein was tied to, which was an international criminal intelligence agency, mainly Mossad, Israeli, US criminal network group, right? So that was a conspiracy theory. Now it isn't, supposedly. Now it's supposedly not a conspiracy theory, but there are other bits within it that if you talk about it, so if you, for example, say that actually the evidence quite clearly shows that Epstein bartered a sweetheart deal, which is why he only got a year when he got done for trafficking kids, right? That's a conspiracy theory. So that's still a conspiracy theory. The rest of it's true, but not that bit. And the other bit,
well, it seems it's self-evident to me.
Yeah, but also this is the bits that isn't being spoken about. So what about his for example, where did he get his money from in the first place?
Totally.
How come he was, what about all the international financial institutions and banks that he was involved with?
Yeah, he was
where's that in the Epstein files? Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
That's true.
Where's
that is true. High five, buddy, and an email is just not the same.
So
wow, I mean, like Les Wexner was financing him 100%, or whoever. Who's Les Wexner even? Like, who's behind him?
So there's
that would be the answer to everything, though.
Yeah, I mean, what there is in those files, for my liking at the moment, is too much salacious stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Right, so it's all this, and I'm not saying that that's not. This is another thing.
Yeah,
so if you start then saying, well, hang on, I'm not sure that is entirely
no big deal.
Well, I'm not saying it's no big deal.
Come on, Ian, that's what you're saying.
But obviously the salacious stuff is appalling. It is appalling, but to see him as this kind of Svengali who could control everybody else is totally missing the point, because it's the other way round. He was a kind of like fulcrum at the center of a global network.
Both ways,
Two ways. And it's the global network that was controlling him, really. Right? So who are the other players? Right? So that's would be the interest, but the thing that worries me about this dump, and another thing I would point out, if you release 3 million separate documents, right, without any kind of index or any kind of cataloging, the only way that you can possibly make any sense of that is using AI. You can't, unless you've got a team of people sitting in a library working through that for the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. You'd have
Right.
to have thousands of people to
To be
really
able
read.
to even talk about what is in those things, what are people using AI? So the people who have been warning against AI for its potential misuse are now reliant on it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that's a good point too.
So there is so much to think about with this stuff that I have been, in fact, talking to you now is the first time I've ever really spoken about it. I've
I'm
definitely been keeping
sorry. It's like
I'm a cat's
the
out the bag now.
last thing I wanted to do was to start talking about that, but I just feel like there are big agendas at work that are controlling. It was all about, I agree with you that a perfect analogy, or even it's in evidence that at least at the most important level, at the upper management level, it works like a board, and it doesn't really matter if it's black nobility or Zionists or Rothschilds or lizards or aliens. Above that, we can't even control the board. We don't even have a proxy, but like we got nothing. So there's no, it doesn't matter. And what we do have, and this is what I always said on the radio, because people will say you're a conspiracy theorist, that's not true. It's like totally fine. All I'm telling you is when they tell you these stories about these people and what's happening in terrorism and blah, 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 when the punchline is, so we have to suspend this right in the Bill of Rights, or so we have to do this, just don't let them do it. Just don't let, if you're willing to stand your ground without any evidence that they're up to no good and just say, hey, you might mean well, but I will not give up this right, then go for it. But that actually is where our power is. There is no other power. You have to comply. And I think collective action of non-compliance, I'm losing faith in that because of the brainwashing and the propaganda and the mind control. However, as a human being with dignity, I could do it, myself. I have an iPhone. I don't think that's like a level of immorality, but I'm not, I mean, it's not great. I don't prefer it. I wish the world didn't have it, but you've gotten to the point where you really have to disconnect. And that in itself is one of the weapons that they use. That you can go grow chickens. It's like that World Economic Forum thing, like I own nothing, whatever. And I'm happy. If you read on in that particular article, it says there are people who won't adapt, but they're in the outlands, and they're just not
It's like
involved.
the Hunger Games kind of thing, isn't it? But I mean, I've recently been speaking quite a bit about digital identity. And I said, if we're not going to comply with it, personally, I think that means, and I'm not saying, oh, look, check me out. I try not to comply with those things.
Yeah, me too.
I don't use the technology the way I'm supposed to use it, and I don't use it. I try not to. But of course, you do have to comply to a certain extent. I do buy occasionally. I have to buy things online. I can't get them in the high street. I have to use supermarkets sometimes because I can't buy the things that I need elsewhere. So I mean, we all have to comply to some degree or another. And and obviously it's not really realistic that we're all going to go and live in some sort of agrarian idyll and grow.
And it neutralizes you.
Yeah. I mean, people that live in, I mean, another point that I would say, the people that say, oh, well, you should just grow all your own food and go and live in the country somewhere and get off the grid. Why should people that live in cities do that? What about people that want to live in a city? Why can't they live in a city if they want to live in a city? And not have to be subject to all this sort of stuff.
Right.
Right.
We built it.
Yeah.
No, we built it. It wasn't a gift from the
some people don't want to live in the countryside.
overlords.
They live in an urban setting. So why shouldn't they be able to live in an urban setting without being subject to tyranny? Right. So I don't think I don't accept that argument. Personally, I might have made some similar sort of choices, but that's my choice. I have decided to do that. I don't particularly want to live in a big city, but a lot of people do, and they should be able to without being subjected to tyranny. Why? I don't see why they should have to.
I've always thought that about regulating industry as well, like banking or whatever. It's highly regulated. You really couldn't get into it if you don't play the game. And I was great at math. I loved spreadsheets. I'm like, yeah, well, it's inherently corrupt now, and you really can't do it, even though it's truly my calling. But
Yeah.
whatever, you can't do it. That's all. And like medicine, my son is en route to becoming a doctor, and I think he's going to hit some major barriers because of his opinions on certain things, his willingness to do certain things, and it's terrible because it's truly his calling, and
Yeah.
and he's not going to be able to do it,
I mean,
or he's going to have to be a vet.
I suppose maybe as a young man going into it, then, with those kind of values, which perhaps, he might have picked up from you, he's at least he's going into it with his eyes open, and as someone that's going into that kind of profession, he is the kind of person, hopefully, that could change it.
Yes, he intends to actually help people.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we've got an appalling situation at the moment. I mean, there's a guy over in the UK, Dr. David Cartland in the UK, who was outspoken. He was an outspoken doctor about the potential, and this is the point. He was not saying all vaccines are deadly. He was just saying that there's some harms being caused here. We need to be vigilant about this. We need to look at this. There's potential problems here, which he said during COVID. Now he ended up being struck off, and the General Medical Council in the UK hauled him over the coals. But this guy, right? He's an honest doctor. He was just doing what he thought was the right. I mean, he took his Hippocratic oath seriously, right? And he tried to live up to it. So obviously he couldn't be a doctor because of that. But what they've done, and this is sick. There's no need for this. It's just cruel. So his hobby is he's a football referee, right? And he referees for kids as well as adults. So he referees for both. So because of his losing his registration through the GMC, they've done what they call a DBS check, which is your criminal check, risk check. So they have said, and the reasoning that they've given is bizarre. The reasoning is that he's potentially a risk because he could lead vulnerable people.
Oh my gosh, corrupting the youth?
Right, into corrupting the youth.
Like
right.
Socrates?
So this guy is not Jeffrey Epstein, right? He is not a risk to children. But now he can't work with children or vulnerable adults actually, but that's then extended to children. And therefore he can't even follow his hobby. He can't even do his hobby.
Actually making the point that I was grasping for earlier, which is these people are all being canceled for their association to Epstein. And I'm like, well, what was he really convicted of? And you're like, yeah, no, he was convicted. It was bad. I have an expression called the sacrificial wolf. So you take a guy who's really bad and you do something kind of unjust, which is cancel all of his friends. But he's so bad that how can I defend that they didn't break up with him because he did something bad? Of course they should have broken up with him. I have no sympathy for those people. But this guy is an example of another cause about which they're making people break up with him because, I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's, a stepping stone. Like other doctors can't associate with this guy and blah, blah, blah. And they have to be wary and he's not going to get invited to dinner parties anymore, which I'm sure is true. And it ruined his life. But that's the kind of thing. Or like putting parents in jail for things their kids have done. Like there's this association, this, aura of guilt that is being legally recognized for just associating with people, which totally eliminates like the idea of mens rea, like where you mean to do something, and actus reus, where you actually do the act. Like these are fundamental legal principles. These are our protections. These are the things we should be caring about. Who's the Svengali behind the Svengali? I don't know, but I do care about that.
I mean, we just had another thing in the UK, which is really important. There was a group of activists that were not working. They were under the umbrella of this organisation called Palestine Action, and they broke into a factory outside in a city called Bristol, owned by Elbit Systems UK, which is Israel's biggest arms manufacturer, technology developer. And they broke in there and smashed up loads of drones and smashed up loads of stuff. And the police came in and got them, and the guards got them, and then they got hauled away, and they got banged up under anti-terrorism legislation. Now, when the charges were brought against them, But even though they weren't prosecuted under anti-terrorism,
Yeah.
they were held under anti-terrorism
Hmm.
legislation on remand, and
No
in
rights.
subsequently Palestine Action, the group that they were in, was prescribed by the UK government as a terrorist organisation, even though it hasn't committed any violent acts. Right now, to my knowledge, now when they were tried, the jury in the trial, they were tried for aggravated burglary. Now, the point of aggravated burglary is there's an element of it of violent intent. So, an intent to commit violence is part of it. Now, that would justify the prescription of Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation, or could be used as justification for prescribing Palestine Action. But the jury in the trial, and when you look at the trial transcripts, and when you look at the way that the trial was conducted, were instructed by the judge to convict these people. It's pretty clear that the judge
Wow.
told
Yeah.
the jury to convict.
Wow.
The jury didn't.
Wow.
It exercised its power to
Nullification.
annul
Yeah.
jury
Mm.
nullification. It exercised its power as a
Wow.
jury, and it didn't convict them. It found them not guilty of aggravated
Unbelievable.
burglary, and it couldn't agree on the remaining other charges, and they were all hung. But nonetheless, it exercised its power as a jury to overrule the judge, and you have to say the government.
Wow.
Now, I have been trying to point out to people for quite a while now that we, in our constitutions, you've got it in the US, every common law jurisdiction has this constitutional right, this power. We, the people, rule. We rule through jury trials. We rule through the rule of
Yeah.
law. All are equal before the law. That is a constitutional nailed on fact. So no government, no official, no expert, no scientific body, no one is more equal before the law than you or I. We are all equal before the law, and we exercise our jurisdiction over the law or under the law. We exercise our jurisdiction in our appraisal of the law through jury, and our application of the law through jury-led trials. We, the people, do that. We are in charge because we do that through jury-led trials. Now, it is not a coincidence, therefore, that governments are doing everything they can. I mean, in America, it's been pretty bad for many, 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 many years. But I mean, in the UK as well, they're just doing everything they can to get rid of jury-led trials or trial by jury, because we don't have to abide by what the government tells us to do. We can overrule the government in jury-led trials. So, that's why they're trying to get rid of all that. So it's pretty obvious that even things like the Constitution, constitutional protections, don't mean anything to the people that rule us. It means nothing to them. It's just something we hold it in great esteem, and rightly so in many respects. We hold these things in great esteem, but the people that rule us don't. They don't care about the law. They don't care about constitutions. They don't even care about legality. They care about none of that. All they care about is power and the protection of themselves. That's it.
This is how I observed that Trump was no good from the get-go. I said, that guy never talks about the Bill of Rights ever. And I said that 11 years ago, and it has always been true. I want to respond a little bit to the jury thing. I agree 100%. There's a famous quote by a famous person, and I can't remember either. But basically it says, to paraphrase, the most important thing in a democracy or free, I don't care if it's democracy, but a free system, free government, government by the people, is the trial by jury. It's the most important thing. And jury nullification, if it rings a bell, if you come across, let me know.
That was George Washington, wasn't it?
I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of George Washington, but it may be.
Or was it Benjamin? I don't know.
So it is the most important thing. And the two things about that is John Adams.
Oh, John Adams, right?
John Adams stated that, and I asked the angels, as my friend Scott from History Homo Sapiens says, the AI or the angels, like John D. or somebody used to talk to the angels.
Yeah.
These are the angels. Representative government and trial by jury are the heart and lungs of liberty. I totally agree.
Well, I'd agree with half of that.
Oh, you don't like representative government? Well,
No.
good faith government of any form would be probably okay. The small, like a small 150 person thing. Like I'm reading, I don't know. I'm an anarcho-capitalist by inclination, but I'm reading this book, Our Enemy, the State by Albert J. Nock. And the whole thing is a distinction between the state and governance. They're just different things. And you don't, the state is actually the opposite of governance. But as far as juries go, nullification, which means even if you find that the person did the thing that he was accused of doing and that thing was illegal, you don't have to convict him if you don't like the law. And we are not permitted in this country, the judge, the lawyers, no one is permitted to instruct the jury as to their right of jury nullification. So what I always wanted to do is buy a billboard and say jury nullification, look it up.
Well, that's actually, that's true in the UK as well. That's true, because that's true in all common law jurisdictions. The judge cannot instruct the jury to do anything.
No, but even the defense attorney cannot.
Or they can't mention it.
Right.
Right. I mean, there's a very interesting documentary actually that someone shared with me, which is of I think it's an NBC documentary from about the late 1980s of a jury doing exactly that. They managed to get into a jury in the US, and this jury nullified a case where a guy was accused of well, he broke the law. He was a convicted felon who bought a gun, which was illegal, and he got done for it. But they decided not to convict him because he had borderline learning difficulties, and they decided that it just wasn't right. It just wasn't right to convict him. They used their conscience. They made a decision based on their conscience, not just the law. Now, interestingly, when the Filton Six were these people were called the Filton Six, where the jury did that in the UK, the defence never contested that they broke the law. The defence admitted that they broke in, that they broke into a private establishment, that they smashed stuff up that didn't belong to them, somebody else's property. They smashed that up, but that they were justified in doing it. That they had lawful excuse because this company was involved in genocide. So what they were doing was trying to stop a far worse crime. They were committing a crime to stop a far worse one. And the jury agreed. The jury agreed.
Wow. Boy, who picked that jury? Yikes.
Well,
you know what I mean? That prosecutor got it wrong. Or maybe you couldn't pick a jury who wouldn't find it.
It's not quite like that in the UK. I mean, that's one of the things that we don't have this ultimate jury picking. I think it's more.
More random.
I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that in the UK, jury selection is nowhere near as
curated
as it is in the US. Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. One more thing I would say, and I've said this for a long time, and I think it goes with what you're saying, is that I object. I haven't written a thesis on it, but I think plea bargains are arguably unconstitutional because we have inalienable rights. And I would say, maybe not a God-given right to a jury trial, but as far as that, our rights that are recognized by man, I would say the jury trial is fundamental and I would argue inalienable, and it is actually recognized as such because you have to agree to give up your right, but then it's alienated from you. So I think it's arguably unconstitutional, and they threaten people with egregious, like way over the top punishments. So my example is so that they will plead guilty and void their right to the jury trial. Tommy Chong, who was of Cheech and Chong, his son made glass bongs, beautiful artistic glass bongs, who was not allowed to sell them across borders. They made an entire documentary about it, so I'm not going to tell you the hour-and-a-half story, but he was absolutely entrapped into selling this beautiful pieces of glass, which are illegal, absolutely entrapped. It was horrible. And Tommy Chong went to jail for something that he wasn't even accused of doing. The plea bargain they offered was, your son doesn't have to go to jail if you go to jail for him, and we embarrass you as being someone who, I think in the document it said, mocked law enforcement in film. So, yeah. I mean, that was part of the plea to put him in jail. Yeah.
So
it didn't say that's.
His dad got put away
for something he wasn't. The dad was not even accused of. Tommy Chong was not accused of participating, but he took the rap for his son. And in the court filings, the prosecutors wrote, Tommy Chong, known for mocking law enforcement in film, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how, and he did it because they were going to put his wife and son in jail for 99 years. They said, we might lose, but we might win. And then they will go to jail for 99 years for selling a piece of glass, a beautiful piece of glass, not a broken piece of glass. So not only does the plea bargain serve to alienate our right to a jury trial, if you had to give everybody a jury trial, could you imagine how many fewer crimes there would be, how many fewer laws there would be?
Absolutely. I mean, there'd be no point passing a law, would there, if juries overturned it repeatedly? So there would be there'd be far less legislation.
And you couldn't, that's a good point. And you couldn't push that many people through the system. You couldn't have bags of weed.
No, but then again, if you've got fewer laws, you've got fewer crimes, haven't you? So if you haven't got
yes,
you know, in order for there to be a crime, there needs to be a law first.
Yes.
Then there can be a crime.
Yes, that's a good
crime
point.
Without a law.
Unless
other than moral law.
Yeah, on its face.
Law. Yeah, crimes against nature and crimes against natural law or God's law. Then but that's morality, isn't it? That's what we would call objective morality. So, I mean, if you think about the idea of the plea bargain, for example, you know, in a common law jurisdiction, you are innocent until proven guilty. Well, there's no due process in a plea bargain, is there? You know, you can't be you haven't been proven guilty. You might have admitted guilt because you've been forced into
under coercion.
Under coercion, but that's not the same as being proven guilty. The only way to be proven guilty is to be found guilty by a jury in a court of law
with all the evidence presented. I totally agree.
Evidence presented, right? So that is not a that's obviously not just because you haven't someone who has not been proven guilty is forced into admitting their guilt by circumstance, coercion.
Yes, by being threatened with cruel and unusual punishment, by the way. And I remember, like telling you that your wife and son are going to go to jail for 99 years for doing nothing is a cruel and unusual punishment. But I used to tell my husband I was afraid, you know, I used to be nervous about the things I'd say because I had a radio show and it was quite public, and people used to write to me and just make me cry. Like it was really scary and I didn't like it. And I was like, I get misunderstood and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And my husband said, you know, you can defend everything you say. You never say anything that you couldn't defend. And I said, you know, you're never going to get a chance to defend it. You're not really going to get a chance to defend it. You're just going to get railroad, canceled, put in jail, plea bargained away. You're not going to get your day in court. So it's a nice idea.
I mean, I had something yesterday. Someone called me rapey scum because because I was questioning the measles jab. So they ended up calling me rapey scum.
Who?
So you just kind of think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know these people are. I mean, it's
measles.
The measles jab.
People used to give their kids the measles on purpose.
Exactly. But well, that's part of what I pointed out. But that resulted in, I mean, other people just calling me horrendous things, just vile things,
Yeah.
just for expressing my opinion. I
Yes.
mean, part of that.
Even in
Oh,
the
sorry.
conspiracy world. Even in the
Yeah, yeah,
conspiracy world, if you like think the earth is round, you might get a little
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
people might make fun of you.
even that. I mean, even that is just about. I mean, and a lot of the kind of censorship that we've had, certainly online and stuff like that, is aimed at inculcating self-censorship, isn't it? It's
100%.
precisely the thing that you just said when you were being abused on the radio. You know, because people are abused for expressing their views, they stop doing it. They stop doing it. Now, if they then see stories about people being sent to prison for expressing their views, or though, and on occasion those stories are well founded, um, then that's obviously, I mean, people are going to kind of think twice about saying what they really think and what they really feel if there's a chance they're going to get sent to prison for it. You know, that's you know, that's the way that, you know, if you look at the worst kind of dictatorships or authoritarian dictatorships that we can remember in probably, you know, in kind of recent history, things like the Stasi, that's how they worked. They worked because everyone was fearful of saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing.
Being seen
So
with the wrong people.
being seen with the wrong people, yeah, being seen in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing. So,
You-
you know, people stop people, you know, so the you know, even though the Stasi did have a very nasty network, they didn't really need to use it that much after a while
Right.
because people were self-censoring
Well,
themselves.
this is something that I wonder about with the technate. Um and the stuff that's in your book and the way these guys talk and the way Elon Musk uh describes the future and AI and the obsolescence of human beings basically. Is that is that mind control? Is it are they overblowing even not just what they think they can implement, but what they could actually do technically? Are they is
Yeah,
part of this them, you know, it's my trillions of invisible monsters everywhere trying to kill us all thing about everything from chemtrails to
yeah,
viruses to AI, you know, just keeping us in a state of terror.
yeah. I mean, for the neo-reactionaries, you know, so one of the things that I talk about is how do you sell things like sustainable development, which is technocracy, which you can sell to the, let's broadly say, you know, for want of a better expression, the left-leaning minded people. You can sell them that because they think they need to do it to save the planet. How do you sell that same idea to sort of small c conservatives that don't like the idea of global overreach and all that kind of stuff? You need some sort of narrative to sell that same system to them. Well, how do you do that? Well, then you come up with a different kind of existential threat that needs to be managed or needs to be, and in the case of the neo-reactionaries, that's the singularity. So they say, for no reason, it has to be said, they say that, you know, the singularity will happen, the point at which AI becomes sentient and AI then starts designing better AI, and that'll be an exponential explosion of a super intelligence that we can't even start to comprehend. Now that they are miles and miles. I mean, Musk is saying this is going to happen. It's going to enable us, you know, to build citadels on Mars and all this kind of stuff. We are nowhere
Definitely
near
not.
getting anywhere close to that. I mean, at
He's
the
still
moment,
trying to get to the moon.
yeah, well, there's that. But I mean, even in terms of AI, I mean, the best they've got at the moment, kind of AI. Yeah, sure, it can render video and graphics, and it's really good, and it's really good
Curate
at,
and synthesize. That's what
yeah,
it does.
and
Curates and
calculate,
synthesize.
curate, synthesize,
Yeah.
calculate, right? LLMs, brilliant at calculations. I mean, it's all, they don't reason, they don't think, they don't do any of that.
They don't
We are no,
create.
they don't create, they're error prone. I mean, there was a paper that was put out not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, I think, or maybe a bit longer ago, where some researchers have taken some everyday tasks that AI is supposed to be replacing human beings with, right? So that, you know, administrative tasks that human beings do, actuaries and people like that,
Yeah.
right? So the AI
That's
is
the
going to
next. Yeah,
AI
that's
is
what's
going to
coming now.
replace all these people, right? So at the moment, when they tried to actually test AI's capabilities, they found that it was accurate about 3.5% of the time. 96.5% of the time. So humans are accurate about 50% of the time. You know, 45 to 50% of the time, humans are accurate because they check things and they
And
double
I
check
think
things.
Silicon Valley humans are very accurate. I think
May
they're
well be.
higher on the accurate scale. So
They
the
might,
delta, the gap between what's going to replace them would
so they
be
might be
even
60.
broader.
They might be 60 or
Yeah.
70% accurate,
Yeah.
right? It turns out that AI is about 3.5% accurate, 4% accurate. So it's
I
nowhere
do, but
near good
that
at these things.
them getting good at what it's already doing, I
Yeah,
think that will happen. But
yeah.
those step changes where it's like another level of reasoning, that creative wabi sabi thing, our brains are analog. And I
Yeah.
don't think there's any way around that. So I think it's going to get good at this, but I don't think it's good. I can't, I don't, I leveling up, I think, is out of the picture for now.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way AI CGI has leapt forward, right, it's amazing. AI CGI now.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I could beat computers for all I know. You know, I mean, I mean, but
No way. I'm too unexpected.
we're not. No, but you know, the fact is, all that is a calculation, isn't it? It's just the rendering of graphics, which
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
essentially boils down to a calculation.
It's interpolating stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's what it's good at. What it's not good at. I mean, something else I discussed in the book is you know, this notion that you know, that Musk said something about you know, that it's XAI is currently hoovering up all our social media data to help AI reason better. Well, it can't reason. I mean, it can't reason. But
It's just
also,
mimic.
yeah, but also he spoke about you know, that when it becomes conscious, right? So I mean, someone ought to say to Elon Musk, and I think I did actually. Someone ought to say to me, "Okay, mate, if it's going to be conscious, define consciousness. Define it,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
Define what it is. If you
Well,
know, if
that's
it,
why I feel like there's a soul. Like they cannot define, they do
every,
not understand the nature of consciousness. And until they do, you can't even understand our existence.
yeah, I think it was a philosopher. I can't remember who it was, but I think he was a professor of philosophy who just pointed out that as far as he knew, and I think he's kind of expert in these kind of things. He wasn't aware that anyone on Earth could define what consciousness was.
Totally.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So he pointed out, quite rightly, I thought, how do you program a machine to do something when you don't know what it is?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I guess it's easy to fake it then because nobody can call you out on it. Nobody can prove it's not. So maybe it is already.
True. That's true. No one can say it isn't. I mean, I had a discussion with someone the other day, and they were saying was that there's always the chance, though, isn't there, that they might do it by accident, which is
Yeah.
true, actually.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
in
then
my
would you even know?
estimation, well, no, but in my estimation, the chances of them doing it by accident are probably far higher than them doing it, you know, with intent.
Yeah,
With
but
intent.
I mean, I think it's a good reason, like life cannot come from non-life, and there are a lot of little details like principles of science that make it impossible to, I guess you don't need that. Okay. Sorry. There are little details of science that make it kind of that point to God. Whether you believe in God or not, whatever is next, but like evolution, there is a subcellular intelligence at work. Like Lamarck was closer to the mark than Darwin. So I don't think they can, because I think it's going to take that divine spark, which maybe it's not divine, but it's definitely analog.
I mean, I think the notion that is held by some of these people like Musk and, you know, like Thiel as well to a great extent, and Anderson and all these people, that they are at the pinnacle of human understanding, that they are on the cutting edge of
Hmm.
what it is to know, what it is to have a grasp of knowledge. And I just kind of think, well, for a start, you don't show any signs of having any empathy, right? So your knowledge of the human condition is practically nil. It's nothing,
No,
right? So you don't know, you don't understand that, right? So you don't see. I mean, the idea that any of us are at the pinnacle of knowledge is just
it's
crazy. It's
really
just
funny.
crazy.
You just gave me in them a contra example of something I learned firsthand in an unusual situation. My first son, unbeknownst to me before he was born, ended up having Down syndrome. He had Down syndrome, and it was quite shocking. And I couldn't get my mind around it. And I'm a talker, I'm a thinker, and I thought, what separates him from a puppy? Like, I don't understand. Like, I always thought of humanity as being the ability to have abstract thought. Like, that's an easy one, right? Like, that's
Yeah,
just what I thought. I was like, that's what separates us from the animals. I'm like, I'm not sure this kid's gonna be able to do that. And it ends up, so I had to like kind of rethink my thing and like observe over the years, is he a puppy? But he's not a puppy, he's a human being. And he has all that. He's insightful. He's an unusually well, my husband's like, you just love him because he's yours. So that's why you think he's like, oh, I know, like he's just amazing. But he
yeah,
he is quite amazing, and he's funny, he's got humor, he's got emotion. His IQ is half of what mine is. Like that's how it normally works, half the parents. So like it's not that. But he has these elements that clearly make him quite a complex and worthwhile human being. And
yeah,
you're
yeah.
pointing out some of the things that make these guys seem less than human.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, spent a lot of my working life working with people with learning difficulties, and I can honestly say, no more so than anybody else, but no less than anybody else.
Right.
I enjoyed their company.
Yeah, they're
And
worthwhile human beings.
I had a
Yeah.
great time. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the best holidays I ever had was through work, going on holiday with some residents to a
Goofy
holiday camp.
bastards, as they say in
To a holiday camp. That was absolutely fantastic. That was one of the most fun things I've ever
well,
done.
and you can trust them, and they have unconditional love for you,
Yeah,
and you
and
can start losing your
boundless
mind in this
energy,
business. Say it again. Endless energy.
boundless energy.
Yes. Well, this kid, yeah, I got a runner. So yeah, I
Yeah,
have to be on my toes night and day. But when you get a little paranoid in the kind of things that you and I engage in for so much of our like waking moments, their reality, like there's no guile there, and there's
oh,
just a
yeah,
connection to the divine spark that's a little closer than people with a lot of super ego, I guess, or
yeah.
whatever it is that.
I have, I have to say there was a fascinating bit of work that I was involved with. Perhaps I should. Yeah, I can say it now. It's years ago. We were observing. We got this was got all the appropriate approval and everything, but we were observing the interactions in a day center of people with learning difficulties when they thought there were no staff were around, right? And I mean, and every single thing that we would commonly attribute to our modern society, hierarchy, some sort of pecking order, subterfuge, deceit, uh, relationship management,
Huh.
all of that was
Huh.
all happening all of the time. And it changed when the power dynamic changed, and the power dynamic changed when the staff would re-enter
Right.
the situation.
Boy,
And
I
it
don't
was
even
very,
think
very
about that
revealing.
stuff.
It was very,
Yeah.
very revealing.
I mean, I'm not a communal animal at all. I'm not social, so I never think in terms of that element of humanity, which is like a barrier of I think it's why I'm a libertarian. It's like I don't even think in social terms, but you really have to. And this book helped me think about that, Our Enemy the State, because he talks about social power, and the state usurps social power, but it's real, it's inherent to humanity and our interactions, how we help each other, what we expect from each other. That's a real thing, and it's common to humans, and it has a lot of power, and they can take it from you, and that's what they're doing in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about the concept of spontaneous order and how that works, right, which is what we could see in a community without a ruling authority over it.
Yep.
Which is what was witnessed, actually, that little
Yeah.
study that I was involved with, But I mean, but the, if you think about what we do in the world, there's that fantastic Leonard E. Reed article, I Pencil, which is
oh, of course, I have that. Yeah.
Right. So, but the point is, 90% of everything we do is based upon spontaneous order. It is people acting in their self-interests to some shared objective, some shared goal. Human beings, our evolutionary advantage is our ability to do that. That is our evolution. Really, that is our evolutionary advantage, because we're not physically superior to other animals. We're not, particularly, physically able to. We don't run faster, swim faster, jump higher. We're not well equipped physically to hunt other animals. But we are the apex predator on Earth because of our ability to organize spontaneously. We can do that, communicate, and we can organize ourselves to do what we need to do in our own self-interests for an agreed objective. Hunt a mammoth, for example. Now, that is something that government usurps. Government imposes order by another party that exists extraneous to that. It imposes its order on us.
Top down, out in.
Which we don't need. We don't need that. We've never needed
Agreed.
that. We don't need it.
Agreed.
We are much better adapted and better equipped to do things in our mutual self-interest.
But this goes to the heart of your book, I think, in that the more complex and large the system becomes, the less we can conceive of it and feel like we can manage it, even though I still think we would, because it would naturally break down into groups of, a dozen, then 100 or whatever. It would naturally form into regional tribes and trading areas and whatever. But so I don't like that our government has spent so much money on research, fostering this kind of tech, and then telling us you can't get food if you don't have an iPhone. You're not going to be able to work. You're not going to be able to transact. I mean, that's where we are. And it's because it's complex. And then they've created a need for, or our perception that there's a need of this governance. And so I want you to react to that. And then I want you to explain to me, as we wrap up, how stablecoin folds into the kind of pervasive control structure, if I understand correctly that it has a place in that.
Yeah, hold on. I'm sorry. I just need to turn my battery on. I do apologize.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's all right. No, it's not your fault.
Well, I'm borderline overtime, and I'm sure you've got stuff to do. It's late for you.
It's late for me. It's nearly my bedtime. That's what I need to do.
And your little buddy back there is being a good boy.
He's being very good. Yeah, it's past his bedtime, so he's asleep now. Sorry, what was the question?
Things are complicated, and that's why the self-ordering society doesn't seem attainable to us now, because things got too complicated, and they're about to get a lot more complicated or top-down managed with stablecoin.
Yeah, no, the thing is, right, so if it is essence, something like technocracy is very, very simple, actually. Because what it is, it's the control of the distribution and allocation of all resources. So if you can control the resources that we need to live, if you can control the food supply, the energy we use, the water we drink, if you can control those things, you have control over our behavior, because we we have to do whatever it is we have to do to get the things that we need. So if you can control that, then you've got control of us. Now that's the point of technocracy, really. That's the point of it, is to give that centralized control of the distribution and allocation of all resources to a tiny little group at the top, the Continental Board, they called it, right? Now, if you then look at how something like stable coins might fit into that, it's quite obvious how it will fit into that. It's programmable digital currency, so it's the same as central bank digital currency, or things like deposit tokens. Same idea. It's programmable currency. Now that can be linked via digital identity to you as an individual. Your token will exist on the blockchain. Now, one of the guys that I write about quite a bit in the book, Balaji Srinivasan, who wrote a book called The Network State. In the network state, he says one phrase that stands up is that all value goes digital. All value goes digital. So that means and they do mean all value, right? So that includes your rights, that includes you, that includes all
The
resources,
breed.
everything goes
Like, that's what
digital.
I'm worried about.
Everything is represented digitally. And actually, another thing that he pointed out, I think it was him, or it might have been Altman, one of the two, said, I think no, it was Srinivasan, said, if it's not on chain, it doesn't exist. Right? So everything is represented digitally on a centrally controlled but seemingly distributed ledger, right? So that is the method of recording the existence of everything. It is how all transactions are conducted. All transactions, not just transactions between multinational corporations, but transactions between you and your local storekeeper when you buy an orange. Those transactions as well, they are also controlled by the people that have the permissions to the digital distributed ledger. So everything is controlled because all value is digital. The orange only exists as a token on the digital ledger. Your money only exists as a token on the digital ledger. The transaction only exists as a token on a digital ledger. You only exist as a token on a digital ledger, because everything exists only on the digital ledger. So if you can control that system, which you can, if you tie programmable digital money to a digital identity. So your token is your digital identity, and every means that you have of transacting in the economy is tied to your tokenized exchange, right? So on a digital ledger. So if you can control that system, that is like the ultimate control of the distribution and allocation of all resources. You have just created a system which is immense in scale. The scale of it is immense. That is why all these AI centers are being built all over the world.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That is why we need all these massive data centers.
Right.
That is why they're buying, why so much natural resources like
Land.
water
Yeah.
are needed, land.
Yes.
They need this data center infrastructure to manage all this, right?
Right.
But they are
Yeah.
building it. There's no doubt that they're
Yeah,
building
because they
it.
just say it's for AI, but I'm like, it's to help me look up,
Yeah,
to consolidate
to help.
Wikipedia and USA Today. I
Yeah,
don't think so.
no, it's not for that. It
Right.
is for AI, but it's so that
Yeah,
AI
right.
it's so that AI can extract specific tokenized data out of what they're calling data lakes. That's what AI is for in that context.
Right.
So AI will make otherwise unmanageable and meaningless sets of data. It will render them
Right.
functional and meaningful, so that
Right.
people can do things like attach a smart contract to a transaction. So let's say, and this is already been done in places
Right.
like Montenegro and places like that. The UN has already done this. They've got these things called green tokens, right? So what that means is, if I go on Monica Porez show, and I say I think that the world is going to be controlled by digital technology, and then I go and try to buy a book called Snowcatcher, or whatever the book was called.
Snow Crash.
Snow Crash, right? So if I do that, then no, Iain Davis can't do that. He's got the wrong opinions. He can't buy that book. The book still exists. The book is on sale. It's just that Iain Davis can't buy it. And that can be done in an instant, in real time, by attaching a smart contract to my digital identity and my digital wallet with my digital currency in it. When I go to make the transaction, I can't do it.
Fattening food and drugs and stuff. Like they'll start with sacrificial wolves, but I can see exactly what you're saying. I've been anticipating that for a long time, and that this is the mechanism by which they can do that. And yeah, they would need a lot of storage.
Incredible. Yeah, they need it. That's why, you know, you're seeing the narrative around climate change soften.
Of course. I was like, are these guys kidding? So and I suspected, and I thought it was a kooky suspicion at first. I said, I think Bitcoin and climate change were there to generate the demand and supply of this side stream of energy, because they need all the fossil fuels and stuff for the AI stuff. Now that seems like, wow, yeah, that could definitely be true, or it's definitely true. But in the beginning, I was like, what do they need all this? Bitcoin is a ridiculous thing. Like, why does it gobble up tons and tons of energy? You know, like it's just a dumb, it's like this. Do you ever see the South Park? You probably haven't seen the South Park, but there's a South Park. It's really vulgar, where they're riding a bicycle, and the bicycle he invented has like a pole that you sit on with your butt, and as you ride the bicycle, the pole goes up your butt, and they're like, what does this do? And the guy, he really loves the bicycle, and he's like,
he really likes
nothing. There's no purpose for it. Like the Bitcoin energy gobbling is like the pull on the cycle.
If you think about that, how that's going to be, don't forget all the data from the Internet of Things, where every device is transmitting data, where every machine that you use, you know, every fuel pump is transmitting data. Everything is transmitting data, right? All of that needs to be analysed and hoovered up and analysed. Now, currently, I think it's the International Energy Engineers Association. I've probably got that wrong, but I think that's correct. They estimate that in order for us to meet the additional energy requirements that are needed to make the fourth industrial revolution actually happen, it would be the equivalent of adding Japan to the world's energy demands every year between now and 2050.
See, and what that means to me is that ultimately this needs to arc.
Yeah.
And that they can't use that kind of energy forever. So this is a means to an end. And on the other side of that is like a much smaller human population, or a much smaller footprint, a lot. And because that trajectory cannot continue in that way. So obviously they have a longer term plan, but I want to say something about this control of all resources. The reason I could be an anarcho-capitalist and never care about regulation and who will build the roads or any of that was this basic principle that I had thought up. The necessities of life are not scarce. Food, air, water, the ability to make clothing, the amount of land that human beings need to occupy, they are not scarce. Everything else are luxuries for which there are substitutes. So if you don't have a road, grow a potato. Oh, well, I don't want to grow a potato. Like there's some world in which you don't have to grow a potato, but you also don't need a world government. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But somewhere in between.
Yes. There's a lot of different points in between. But if you tokenize every single thing and you make it so that we do not have natural access to food, water, clothing, all of that dirt, if we are really alienated from that, then there is no freedom. There's no liberty whatsoever. There's no outs. There's no alternative. And that's a problem. So is it inevitable?
That's why something that I'm trying to point out in the book as well is that is that why they're in a rush to get this, because I don't know whether you've noticed it, I certainly have. The agenda's speeding up all the time. It's getting faster and faster and faster. They're moving on to the next thing all the quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I would say that, arguably COVID was a bit of a rush job. It wasn't. They didn't have all their ducks lined up. They could have.
Well, I thought it was financial. They had to do it because we had 2% interest rates and we're about to have a crash. They had to do it when they did it for financial, because of the financial system.
Yeah, it was definitely a heist. Yeah, that was mainly a heist.
But they lost a lot of ground. So obviously we weren't conditioned enough.
So
we are still shaking each other's hands, which they did not want.
Yeah, and a lot of us didn't comply and all that sort of stuff. It didn't quite work out as I think that was intended. But it was a kind of, I think it was almost like a trial balloon as well for this, which is digital ID linked to digital programmable money. That is the end. That is the end game. Because once that happens, then, up to this point, you think about how humanity has been controlled up to this point. It's mainly through deception, propaganda, kind of war, events, disease, things like that have had to be done to control our behavior. The use of applied psychology, definitely. Propaganda helps with that, that kind of thing. But we have to be controlled through some sort of manipulation. There has to be a process to control us. Once we have digital identity linked to programmable digital currency, and all assets and everything, in fact, is tokenized on a digital ledger, and all value goes digital, and nothing exists unless it is on chain. If they can get that established, which they're very close to, which is what the book is about, that is a real control mechanism, a real one.
Right
down to the individual level. That is, sorry.
Right. No longer requiring the consent of the government.
It no longer requires our consent. Yeah. We are now actually controlled right down to the individual level. If we step out of line, we could be punished absent any kind of law, any kind of decision even. That could just be pre-programmed into the system. So that is a genuine physically binding control system. And that's why they're so desperate to get us to pick it up. Because I think we are in a race against time and against that people that want to exert that kind of control. And they're constantly playing this. They're always on a knife edge, because they want this thing, the agentic state, right? They want this AI algorithm controlled state instead of government. So in order to do that, they have to destabilize all governments all at the same time. So they have to do things like the Epstein file dump. So in doing that, they are exposing what government truly is to a certain extent, so that people will rail against
the crazy stuff Trump is doing. Venezuela, Cuba, Greenland, Iran, Syria, Gaza, Ukraine. I mean, it's really getting to where it's preposterous. And another thing is these crazy taxes. I'm not going to get into taxes, but really bizarre taxation is coming up, like where you can't deduct your local taxes from the federal taxes, which like even countries wouldn't do. Yeah, it's definitely a crime against math. It's insane. And the more they do crazy things like that, the more it's like a dumbass is going to be like, that doesn't make sense. And seems to be more and more of that than ever before.
Yeah, because the idea is to now we are now at the point, I'm pretty sure, that we are now at the point where government itself is to be derided, destroyed, pulled apart.
Yes, I've noticed that. I watched a show called Mr. Robot, I think, or I can't remember. It was the TV show, and it opened with the corporations and government or whatever in a penthouse being evil. And I remember thinking, they're really making us hate DC now. Yeah. They really want us to hate it. And I thought to myself, well, DC must be protecting us from something, worse.
Yeah. So what will happen is that you will get someone like Palantir will ride in over the horizon and say, we're not having any more of this evil government. we're going to build shining new citadels where everyone will have fantastic lives,
Yeah.
ruled by AI. Won't that be great?
And it doesn't have to start in the US, but it might be started by the US. Like this, I think, they talk about things like us invading Mexico, and this woman was abducted, and now she's near, this 80-something-year-old woman who I think was dead before the PSYOP even started, but that Nancy Guthrie. But they're, now she's on the border of Mexico, and it's like, oh, okay, so we're probably going to invade Mexico on this, so they can take these places, Venezuela, Ukraine, Gaza, whatever, and do what you call in the book special economic zones.
Yeah.
And so you think like America, you don't have to worry. It's like not around the corner here. It might be or might not be, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, if you think about, the idea of freedom cities and stuff like that, which is just another name for special economic zones.
Yeah.
So currently there are more than 5,000 special economic zones in the world.
That's amazing.
There are places like Etana in Nigeria in the Lekki Free Zone, which is it's a burgeoning city. People live in it. Which a professor of African studies, I can't remember the guy's name, said, once you enter Etana, you are leaving the Nigerian state. So
it's like American Indian reservations.
Who's behind that?
Yeah.
These same guys, people like Thiel and Altman and people like that, and Srinivas and these guys. They're the ones that are formulating that and pushing that forward. So it's an independent jurisdiction within Nigeria. So it's Nigerian, it's within Nigeria, but it's independent of Nigeria. That's what freedom cities are supposed to be in the US.
Keep your eye on how UNDRIP, or like the indigenous people thing, folds into that over time, because that's how our American Indian reservations are here. And I think that has something to do with what's happening in Greenland. I think the indigenous people of Greenland may be playing a role, may be the reason why, what now you're making me think, as I try to crack the code on what's happening in Greenland, that maybe they'll give those people a special economic zone. They will think that they have victory, but what they did with the American Indian reservations here, they used to test weapons that were illegal to test in the US, like they're doing in Ukraine. So these things are exploited for sure. And I can see a nexus between them.
I mean, if you look at that map and this is something else I mentioned in the book, but you look at that map that was drawn out verbally by Trump shortly after he came into office. Because don't forget, he was talking about Greenland almost immediately when he came into office.
No, he's talked about it in 2019.
Oh yeah, even further back than that, yeah.
And
when he spoke about taking the Suez, taking the Panama Canal, buying the ports from C.K. Hutchinson, isn't it, Holdings, doing that. Then obviously now there's what's happened in Venezuela. So then there's the
Cuba.
fact that Cuba. Looking at it, then there's the fact that, for example, the Mexican government is pretty much already doing what the US government. I mean, it is practically their proxy of the American. So if you talking about renaming, the Gulf of America, that kind of thing, So this map that he's verbally drawing out over a series of not a long space of time, 2 weeks, he did this, right? So he's verbally drawn out this map. That map is the North American Technate. That's the only the map that goes from the northern tip of Greenland all the way down to Venezuela as one thing. The only place that exists, that map has ever been. I mean, it's much bigger than the North American Union.
Right.
So the only place that map has ever been seen is on the back cover of Technocracy Inc.'s 1934 study course. That is the map of the North American Technate.
We're used to thinking of Greenland and those Netherlands, the northern regions, as not important because they're icy or whatever. But when you take that drone's eye view and scooch right over the North Pole, you see that is the gateway to the east.
Yeah, and there's a tremendous amount of natural resources on oil, gas, huge oil and gas reserves there. rare earth. You know,
Yep.
there's loads of stuff there. I mean, the Americans have had a sizable contingent on there for a long time already. I mean, the Americans have got a military presence there, and they've had a military presence there for many years. And I mean,
Yes.
then there's the underground city that was been constructed in northern Greenland, which nobody really knows what's there. You know, well, obviously some people do, but nobody's saying. You know, so I mean, so you know, it looks like the American government certainly has always had a foothold there. It's got
Yes.
a foothold there for you know
I've
since the Second World War.
I've been wondering if Trump is threatening them so that they re-up with Denmark, because the indigenous people expressed the desire to be independent, like formally expressed it 2 years
Who
ago.
knows?
So
But I mean, the
who knows?
EU have been playing this same game. I mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, Trump is not going to annex it using by force.
No.
You know, because
NATO is not a,
would
it's
yeah.
it's a
So
unit.
yeah. So obviously that isn't going to happen. But yet the EU have played along with it. I mean, shortly after Trump first started talking about it at the start of his first
Yeah. Okay.
presidency in
Mhm.
2016 or wherever it was, the EU were posturing, saying that, you know, senior EU spokespeople were posturing, saying that, you know, this could destabilize NATO and there might be a war between the EU and America. I mean, it's just ridiculous rhetoric. Ridiculous.
Well, they're using a
So,
lot of stuff to pump up the defense spending throughout NATO.
yeah, yeah.
But all of this to say there's really no point in us talking about it. If it's inevitable, we might as well just jack in and pick our favorite video game to play.
Yeah, yeah.
But if not, like, what do you see it as inevitable? And
No, no, no. No, I think it's a very precarious situation for them because, you know, they have to do things like, so, you know, if you look at something like COVID, they're exposing themselves. They're exposing the soft underbelly of what they are. You know, more and more people. There's no doubt that COVID made people question authority like never before. You know, and then every single thing they do, the release of the Epstein files currently, you know, the British government saying that the people in Britain were going to have digital ID to go to work. I mean,
Yeah.
that is, you know, the British have never accepted government issued ID cards apart from during war. They've never accepted it at any other time. Always been against it. So that he knew that saying that would not go down well with the Brits, right? So why do they keep doing all this stuff? I mean, the way that the EU is mismanaging the rollout of its central bank digital currency by forcing everybody to comply. By, you know, this is not conducive to even kind of to plausible governance. It's not conducive to plausible governance. They are making themselves look, in my view, they are making themselves look deliberately inept. Why?
More of the same. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it would cause for a change that's not as frail as humans,
Yeah.
perhaps.
I'm pretty, you know, I mean, having written that, you know, that I didn't explore that so far in the book, but subsequent events have certainly made me think. Yeah, I think that you know, I'm quite proud of what I've written in the book, because I think it, you know, whenever you do any kind of research like that, you're always kind of thinking, well, is this right? I mean, I could barely believe it when I was writing it, you know.
Yeah.
I was
No,
just
but
like, is
I'm
this right? Is this
so
true?
you
Is it
must
kind of,
really understand it because you can explain it in a way that's understandable. And if it didn't hang together, you wouldn't be able to
no,
explain it like that.
you have to double check things and cross reference things and say, well, is that real? Is that really what was said? Did they really say that? Did they really do that? And then you sort of double check it and you think, my God, yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at all my notes on your, like, I just printed out your table of contents just to be like, highlights of each chapter, and I just quickly filled up the whole page. Like every single chapter has its own discrete element of the, kind of what's emerging here. And I don't know, it definitely looks like a progression.
If you
But it
look at
also does, it seems like they are vulnerable. They are definitely egomaniacal,
yeah, I
arrogant.
mean, yeah, definitely. But I mean, nothing is worse, is there, in terms of ego and megalomaniacal psychopathy than what they're doing in Gaza. I mean, let's face it. What they're basically saying is that they can build a shiny, shiny new city of the future on the bones of dead Palestinian children. That is what I mean. It's grotesque. It's
And they're calling it the
unbelievably
Board
grotesque.
of Peace.
The board of peace.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is an
Well, you can
inversion.
buy in. I mean, this idea
Yeah.
that you can buy in for $1 billion, right? In Srinivasan's network state, you can buy sovereignty. Sovereignty is something you purchase in this network state. Well, that's exactly isn't that exactly what they're proposing in Gaza, that you can buy in for $1 billion? Then you're in charge, right? You're in charge, or part of the decision-making process, not because someone has elected you, not because the people that live there want you to be in charge, not for any of other reason than the fact that you're well off, that you're wealthy. If you've
But
got $1 million, you're in.
if it's
A billion.
totally controlled, then that money has a lot less meaning. If it's
Yeah.
really highly defined how you can use it and how you can live, what's the point of it? It's almost like you're just putting it back into the pot.
But also, don't forget what that money will be used for is building this infrastructure that they've got planned, which is exactly what I talk about in the book. The notion of this highly controlled, smart city infrastructure. I mean, they're already talking about a military base in Rafah with 5,000 US troops in it. So what are they for, other than controlling everything around them? You're talking about internment camps for the Palestinians, but $1 billion buy-ins for people that want to go and live on the new
Oh my
Israeli
God,
Riviera.
that really is sick.
It is sick. It is sick. But this is the point that I'm trying to stress as well in the book.
Ugh.
Just because you as a rational, normal, compassionate human being can't imagine the depth of depravity that would be required to think as some of these people do not for 1 minute imagine that they aren't like that. They are. They
Oh,
are like
yeah.
that.
I mean, look at things like 9/11 and COVID. Like, they kill a lot of innocent people
Yeah,
for.
we are nothing. We are nothing.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
we're
in
cattle.
the Dark Enlightenment, the guy that wrote it, Nick Land, he referred to us as what he called technoplastic beings, right? Where we need to literally be cybernetically transformed so that they can extract what they call sovereign rent from us. So if we're worker drones, we have some value. If we're not, he wrote, our sovereignty would be treated with derision. In technocracy, we're called the human animals, to be programmed like
Ugh.
machines.
See,
Right?
that
Well,
actually,
this is what these people believe. They
that's the
believe it.
weakness. In my opinion, that's the Achilles heel.
Yep.
To really, truly not understand the nature of humanity, how can
Yeah.
you
No, they
how
don't. They've
can you
got no idea.
control it if you don't really understand? It's like the consciousness debate. If you don't understand it, you cannot control it.
So that's what digital ID linked to digital currency is so crucial for them, because they know that we're going to rebel against it. So they want to have real physical control of our lives
Right.
as quickly as possible. Because at the moment when, I mean, unfortunately, people are sleepwalking into this, which is another reason for writing the book.
Yeah.
People are sleepwalking into it. We are accepting more and more encroachment into our lives all the time. So people need to stop doing that for a start. But when they do actually get this system in place and people realize what's been built around them, they're going to be horrified and probably terrified, and then they'll revolt. But if they've got the control,
It's too, yeah.
mechanism, it's too late.
Revolution,
It's
it will
too
not be
late. It's
possible.
done. The revolution. It's not that the revolution won't be televised. The
Yes.
revolution won't be possible.
Yeah. Even Uncle Ted says that back
Yeah.
in wherever it was 20 years ago. He said, we're getting to the point where you will not be able to resist because you won't be able to organize.
Yeah. They'll control.
Yeah.
And also,
So what do we do?
Well, what we do is we don't accept, which is what I've been trying to talk to people about in terms of the rollout of digital ID. We just don't use the systems. We don't use them.
Okay.
Now that is going to mean accepting hardship. That's the problem. So, for example, in the UK, they want us to use what they call one login to use all government services, and that's going to create our digital identity token that will then be stored in something called the gov.uk wallet.
And that's your healthcare, right?
That's everything.
Yeah.
Everything about your life. Everything.
See, we have a law against that, the 1974 Privacy Act, but they're flouting it left and right.
Yeah, but you've also got things like the ident system and the hard system, which just doesn't care about that law.
No, but I don't understand why this is a law. It hasn't been repealed.
No, you've got doing things like the Doge did, which was when Trump spoke about the removing the silos, the data silos within government. So basically taking all Americans' data from the Department of Defense, the Department of Social Security, the IRS, the Department of War, whatever it is now, from all the Department of Justice, taking all that data, putting it into one data set, and then handing it over lock, stock, and barrel to Palantir. Right?
And then they're just going to blame Musk and Trump. Yeah, they're going to use it. President Newsom is going to use it. They're not going to undo it, but they get to say it was Musk.
This is going back to the point I was making earlier. Unfortunately, although the Americans have got a very good constitution in lots of respects, as have the British, they don't mean anything if people don't observe it, or more to the point, they don't mean anything if we don't insist that they are upheld. If we don't do that, they're not going to be upheld. They're not going to be upheld. So people have got to wake up. I mean, I've said that now. I mean, I don't like using the word wake up, but I just have. We have, people have got to get their fingers out because if we just passively accept what is coming down the path towards us very quickly, we are going to get steamrolled.
Yeah, and there won't be any going back. I'm looking for, I'm trying to find the best place to tell people to read the book. Here it is. Oh, it's got its own URL. I see that now. It's the technocraticdarkstate.com. And I actually bought the physical copy because I love physical copies. I like to touch and feel my books, but I had to read yours in digital form because I didn't get it in time. And thank goodness I started because it's like 430 pages. It's actually really perfect size.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we've got the balance right in the kind of print size and everything, so that it's still readable. I hope, because it's, because I have published books before which are quite big, but so to keep the page size down, you reduce the print.
Oh no!
You need a magnifying glass to read it,
No, but it was not just readable, like physically readable, but it was very it was very well done, very well organized, very well written, and each chapter goes into a lot of historical stuff. It's well documented, and it clarified for me. I really found it was very murky in my mind what the Dark Enlightenment was, where it came from. Like I could not. I felt like, I don't know if esoteric is the right word, but I felt like it was some kind of occulted philosophical thing. And it's not. Like when you bring it back to where the origins and you show the progression and show where it's headed, it is comprehensible and actually quite straightforward the way you lay it out. And it's not fluffy. I mean, it's 430 pages. It's still a lot of detail, but it's very good, very well written.
Oh well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say so.
It's true. So I'm going to tell people to go. I can't, for some reason, I can't pull it up onto the screen, but the
Yeah,
technocraticdarkstate.com.
yeah, it's all one word. The
Yeah.
technocraticdarkstate.com. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ordered the book myself. I will receive it in the mail, but you gave me the courtesy of an advanced copy in digital form, which was quite enjoyable. But I
Yeah,
couldn't write on it. I had to print pages out to write on them. I
and I
hate
just I
that.
just like to say, yeah, the first edition is sold out now. That was the reason that we did that was by pre-order. Though everybody that pre-ordered the first edition will get
Oh,
theirs. They're now being distributed now.
okay.
But the second edition is the one. There is no change other than
Right.
the fact that it's called the second
Is
edition.
it a weight?
No, no,
No. Okay.
no. If you order it now, the people
I'll
that
get it.
pre-ordered will
Yeah.
be getting
Okay.
theirs
That's
sent to
over.
them
Okay.
now. And if you order it new now, you'll just get it sent like normal.
Yeah. Well, if I had a copy of it, I would show the cool picture.
Yeah.
You'll have to order it to read it to find out. But it's always, I just love picking your brain. Really, there's nothing I can ask you that you don't have an intelligent, thoughtful response to, and your thoughts are original and unique, which I really like because a lot of
But
people just blah blah, but not you.
believe me, there are a lot of things you could ask me that I know absolutely nothing about. But fortunately, you and I are on talking about the subjects that we both know a little bit
Yes,
about. What
but you would say, you're not blowing smoke. But I just like it because you don't give me answers that I like typical the stuff that's been pre-vetted in the, altiverse.
No, no. I mean, and one thing that another thing that concerns me about the Epstein thing, just before we go, is the number of people that are making very, very bold statements about what things mean in those emails. And I
Yeah.
think that I think we need to exercise caution. I mean, for a start, although undoubtedly a lot of those emails will be genuine, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Uh, if you were, for example, let's say an intelligence agency that wanted to mislead people and send them down pointless avenues of
Absolutely. I
research,
thought
what
Pizzagate was like that.
a wonderful gift that email
Yeah.
dump is.
Yeah.
You know,
It's too much, yeah. And even if there's truth in it, like Pizzagate, what does it get you? Nothing. It gets you just
uh, and,
diverted.
I think, I mean, you made a very good point earlier. It doesn't really matter, and I am increasingly of that view that it doesn't really matter. Of course, it matters to the victims, and of course, these
Yes.
things are important. But all we need to do is realize that there is nothing good. There is nothing good coming out of this system that we are enduring. There is nothing good coming out of it. So we have to take control of the situation, and we have to construct something that is better than what we've got now.
Yes, I think that's a tall order, but I feel like you can do it as an individual. And one
Yeah,
thing is, like, I went to the DMV and got my license renewed way before it should, because they're bringing the real ID. And whenever
yeah,
I'm in the airport, like, I won't let them take my picture. But they have it anyway, because I mean, I've gotten into this country without showing my passport. And I'm like, what? And my son, too, had never been out of the country. They let him in without showing the passport. And they're like, oh, we've got your face on file. It's like, but I didn't consent to that. But yeah, we need to be hyper vigilant about it's good to distill that it's the digital ID that is the linchpin to the whole thing.
yeah, it is, yeah.
So people can, you don't have to smash your phone with a hammer, but you don't have to register
Yeah, I
either.
mean, I think the thing is, I mean, as well. It's one of the problems that we've got with digital ID is that we're already using it, right?
Yeah.
We're already using most of it. The infrastructure that they want to use to turn what currently exists into a control system, each little component of that already exists. And we're already using it.
Yeah.
Facial recognition at airports,
Yeah.
real ID, all these kind of things that we're already using, our smartphone apps, our thumb recognition on our smartphone apps, that kind of stuff, that's already happened. But what they haven't done yet is make this whole thing interoperable. It's not linked. It's not a cohesive, linked together system.
Yep.
Now, in order to do that, they need us to consent to some additional consents, biometric consents mainly. So that's what they're trying to elicit from the population at the moment. If they can get us to cross that Rubicon, as I've tried to say, and as I've said in the book, once that system is locked in, we are locked in.
Yeah. That's what they're using immigration for everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And and this is another thing, isn't it? So then you're in the immigration is not a non-issue, right?
Right.
Immigration is a very important issue.
Right.
And so what they're doing is take people's genuine concerns,
yep,
weaponize them and use them against them for their agenda.
And they create a real crisis that you would be genuinely concerned about.
Create a crisis, yeah. Create a crisis, yeah.
Well, let us hope that forewarned is forearmed. Yep. And continue the dialogue. I highly recommend the Technocratic Dark State, technocraticdarkstate.com, as really to understand what's happening in a way that you can understand it. It eliminates that techno jargon that makes you feel powerless and hopeless. And knowledge is power. So we thank you again for bringing your awesome skills to the good fight. I always feel like the real professional journalism, the professional writing style and research is hard to come by in this world where you've got to forge out a living, one book at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hope people will support your work. And thank you so much for your time. It's super late for you, but I'll send you, let me make sure that your recording is uploaded. So don't go away after the outro, please. And we'll hopefully talk to you again soon. And great luck to you, Iain. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Monica. It's a pleasure. Thanks very much.